Good morning, it's 9:30 on Monday the 1st of September, live across the UK. Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, this morning, Reform UK will unveil plans to save billions of pounds in government waste. We'll be hearing live from Deputy Leader Richard Tice and former Chairman Zia Youssef.
Yes, Richard Tice is claiming that council tax could be cut by £350 a year if pension funds were reformed. I'll be at that press conference a bit later, so keep tuned throughout the day.
And we're also going to bring you a live interview, which we're going to do with the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch. After Nigel Farage says a reform government would deport more than 600,000 illegal migrants, we'll ask her what she'll do about the problem. She's also going to talk about Labour's secret tax raid, which could mean you pay a lot of tax if you sell your home.
Well, elsewhere, Parliament returns today as the Home Secretary pledges to reform the asylum system. The government's plan for change includes a promise to clear the backlog of cases and to tighten rules on family members being allowed to join migrants.
And with a record number of small boat migrants arriving this year, we'll tell you why leaving the European Convention on Human Rights might be easier than many people claim, and why leading lawyers say leaving it would not compromise the Good Friday Agreement, which has brought peace in Northern Ireland.
And we'll be getting a reaction to that news that Queen Camilla fought off a man who tried to grope her when she was a teenager.
So we're delighted Kemi Badenoch's coming on. She's visiting a housing estate, and she is going to talk about how the Tories are tabling votes on Wednesday in the Commons to effectively try and tie the Chancellor's hands so that she can't, in the budget in November, can you believe it, bring in capital gains tax on the property you own. So when you try and flog it, you have to pay capital gains tax for the first time, which could be tens of thousands of pounds.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense at all, because for most people who own one home, that's your house where you live. And if you have to move to go somewhere else, you can't afford to lose £30,000, £40,000 in tax and then buy another property. But I mean, it's just speculation at the moment, isn't it? But we just have no idea what taxes she's going to raise.
Well, and we also think she's going to put tax on landlords' profits. So if a landlord rents a property, that they'll have to pay tax on that, capital gains on that. Well, we know what the landlord will do. He or she will put that extra money on the tenants.
They'll sell the house, business will buy the house, and then they don't have to pay national insurance. So Treasury will lose that. But she has tied her hands by not being willing to raise income tax or VAT, or even make cuts. That would make even more sense.
Well, what do you think about all this? Send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's your 60-second news update with Sophia Hill.
Very good morning. The top story is just after 9:30. The Home Secretary is pledging the biggest overhaul of Britain's borders and asylum system in years as ministers try to bring order to what they're calling a chaotic legacy. Queen Camilla has revealed that she fought off a man who attacked her on a train when she was a teenager. According to a new book about the monarchy, the Queen told Boris Johnson about the attempted indecent assault during his time as London Mayor. Breaking this morning, at least 622 people have been confirmed dead and more than 1,500 injured in a 6.0 magnitude earthquake that struck eastern Afghanistan. And tapping in and out on your phone could be the future of train travel. For the first time, a location tracking ticketing system is being tested on East Midlands Railway between Leicester, Derby and Nottingham from today onwards. And storm season's first names are in. Amy, Bram and Chandra are at the top of the list, and they've been revealed after more than 50,000 suggestions from the public, with many entries honouring loved ones and even favourite pets. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
So here we go now. It is 8 days since this extraordinary story broke about Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, buying a very nice, smart, swish apartment in Hove in Sussex, 269 miles, I think, from her constituency. And the great hoo-ha, Miriam, is about, by declaring it as her official residence, how could that be an official residence, her principal residence, if your constituency is 270 miles away, 269 miles away? Tricky. She would have avoided the prohibitive tax that was increased on people who buy a second home by this Labour government, saving her £40,000. Stinks, reeks of hypocrisy if she did that, because she's been a great enemy of tax avoidance, which is legal, but it's about perception. Why doesn't she just clear it up and tell us what's gone on, really? That's the easy solution, isn't it?
It all seems very unclear, because you don't have to live in your constituency, of course. Most MPs do. But obviously she's going through a divorce. Her children still lives at this house in Manchester, but she doesn't. So there's no suggestion that she's broken the law, but I agree it doesn't look good. But don't you think there's some politics going on behind here, Andrew? Because Keir Starmer's in trouble. He's got terrible poll ratings. Some people in Labour think he's not going to survive the whole Parliament. And there are people in the Labour Party who are desperate that it won't be Angela Rayner to take over. And so how on earth did it get into the public domain? How much stamp duty she's paid?
This must be coming from her own side, that's for sure, because the Tories would have no access to it. But the idea as well, people say, it's because she's working class. People are jealous because she's done very well. Rubbish. Look, if I had £1 for every minister who said Angela Rayner has paid taxes within, everything she's done is within the law. They said that over the great freebie row, which when they first got into power, Wahid Ali, a Labour donor, had given Keir Starmer £32,000 for clothes and spectacles. There are all sorts of other freebies, all legitimately declared.
But don't you think
it damaged them? And then, of course, Keir Starmer gave £6,000 worth back.
No, it was
all within the rules, and what Rayner's done is within the rules. But if she's dodged £40,000 of stamp duty, that stinks of hypocrisy. One rule for them, one rule for us.
But I do think people pick on her because she's working class.
I think they pick on her because she's Deputy Prime Minister.
Well,
she's fair game.
You think about the photos of her that make it onto the front of the paper, that incredibly unflattering picture of her vaping in a rubber dinghy. I mean, it was picked because it was so unflattering, or pictures of her dancing in Ibiza. Why shouldn't she do that? Well, and I think there is this kind of snobbery, and whatever her politics, she was born and raised in poverty, she was a single mum as a teenager, and now she's Deputy Prime Minister. That is an achievement, even if you don't like her politics.
I quite agree.
And I do think she gets picked on.
But I do recall when it came to light that Jeremy Hunt had bought a number of properties when he was Chancellor of the Exchequer. He was accused by a very senior Labour politician of, quote, exploiting Tory tax loopholes to avoid stamp duty. And who made that allegation? Angela Rayner.
Well, there you go. Well, I think one thing we can agree on is that stamp duty is a terrible tax that stops people moving when they need to.
And while a lot of people want to avoid paying it, it's very difficult to avoid paying it if you're Secretary of State for Housing, particularly coming 2 weeks after the Minister for Homelessness, Rushanna Ali, resigned, even though Bridget Phillips and the Education Secretary said she hadn't broken any rules when she evicted tenants from her home, her property she owned in London, and then put the rent up, £700 a month.
Well,
she resigned over that.
She did.
It was within the rules, but the perception... The truth is, does Rayner's case pass the sniff test?
Well, probably not, but then nothing does. But doesn't it highlight how difficult it is to be a landlord? And landlords are always... there's this perception that landlords are super rich and they are exploiting their tenants, whereas lots of landlords are pensioners, let's say.
It's going to get a lot more difficult under this government.
Who have one home, and that's their pension income. It's already been made more difficult by the last government. It's going to be made... We need people to rent out houses, otherwise...
We do.
How are people going to...
Now, in fairness to Angela Rayner, we will read the statement from her office, which says this: the Deputy Prime Minister paid the correct duty owed on the purchase entirely properly and in line with all relevant requirements. Any suggestion otherwise is entirely without basis. So whoever wrote that statement, happy to read and share it with you, but we'd like the Secretary of State to answer some specific questions, which she won't.
Maybe she'll come on tomorrow, Andrew. We'll see. Well, let's move on. There's been a major development in the battle to end the migrant crisis.
A new report says the UK can withdraw, after all, from the European Convention on Human Rights without breaching the Good Friday Agreement, which was Blair's great triumph about bringing peace in Northern Ireland.
Well, it's often claimed by critics that leaving the ECHR would threaten that peace in Northern Ireland. Well, Dr Conor Casey from Policy Exchange is one of the report's authors, and he joins us now. Conor, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us this morning. Now, can you just remind us what is actually in the Good Friday Agreement in terms of legally? What does it consist of?
Absolutely. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. So the Good Friday Agreement was a landmark peace deal. It was agreed in April 1998. And as Andrew mentioned, helped bring to a close over 30 years of political violence within Northern Ireland. What we call the Good Friday Agreement is actually made up of two separate but closely related agreements. There's the British-Irish Agreement, which is an international treaty agreed between Great Britain and Ireland, and there's a multi-party agreement, and that's agreed between the British and Irish governments and the main political parties in Northern Ireland, like Sinn Féin, the Ulster Unionist Party, the SDLP. There's a lot in the agreement. It covers a lot of issues, but the three main things the Good Friday Agreement settled were, first of all, they included an absolute commitment of all the major political parties to exclusively peaceful and democratic politics and a total renunciation of political violence. Second, the Good Friday Agreement sorted the constitutional status of Northern Ireland, and what was agreed was that the future of Northern Ireland, whether it remained within the Union or whether it joined a united Ireland, would be settled by democratic means, the majority of the people of Northern Ireland. And finally, the agreement set up new devolved institutions to exercise a measure of devolved power for the province. It created an assembly and an executive committee, and it put safeguards in place to make sure the powers given to that devolved assembly were not abused. So that's, in a nutshell, what the Good Friday Agreement did.
So why then are people saying that leaving the ECHR would destroy that agreement or compromise that agreement?
Well, there's two answers there, Miriam. The flippant one is that the Good Friday Agreement is a document that's more discussed than read. So it's quite a long document, and there's a lot of sort of technical legal provisions in it. But a more serious answer is that I think there's a misunderstanding about the role the European Convention plays within the Good Friday Agreement framework. It does have a role to play. Its role is to act as a safeguard for the new Northern Irish institutions, the new devolved institutions. The Good Friday Agreement envisions the European Convention being incorporated into Northern Irish law and being able to be enforced in Northern Irish courts and in British courts. That's what the Good Friday Agreement requires in respect of the ECHR. But it says nothing about the United Kingdom needing to remain within the international system of the Convention in perpetuity. The United Kingdom, or Ireland for that matter, neither of them waived their entitlement under the European Convention to denounce the treaty. So I think the misunderstanding comes from not reading closely enough what is actually provided for in the Good Friday Agreement.
But this has been one of the, people who say we must never leave the European Convention, this has been one of the central points they make again and again. If you do that, you surrender, potentially compromise the hard-won peace in Northern Ireland. How have they got it so wrong, or have you got it wrong?
I would say this is a matter where the case, no one has really made the case, Andrew, is what I would say. It's kind of taken for granted. It becomes received wisdom. But it is just a matter of looking at what was agreed. And to be very clear about this, there is a role for the European Convention. The Good Friday Agreement sees it as a very important safeguard, but it's very important to get precisely right what kind of safeguard it's meant to be. It's not meant to be a UK-wide safeguard that puts obligations on Westminster Parliament, Westminster Government. It's limited, it's localised to Northern Ireland, the devolved Assembly and the devolved institutions. So it does envisage a special status for Northern Ireland there, a special regime to account for its unique legacy of political violence. But it's about getting the nature of the safeguard correct, and people have exaggerated it. I think that's where the root of the problem is.
Very interesting.
Really is.
Conor Casey from Policy Exchange, thank you so much. And next time someone comes on the programme and says that we can't leave the ECHR because of the Northern Ireland Agreement...
Are you sure?
I'll say read the report.
Yeah, read the report. Now, some breaking news this morning. Sir Keir Starmer, well, this is extraordinary, has launched a Downing Street reshuffle, moving Darren Jones from the Treasury to the Cabinet Office as the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. This is a new role created by Downing Street. We were told explicitly over the weekend there was going to be no reshuffle. It does feel a bit to me like moving the deck chairs on the...
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a completely new role, and they have been talking behind the scenes about how Downing Street needs more power. So maybe he's kind of a new enforcer for Keir Starmer.
Yeah. So who becomes Chief Secretary to the Treasury?
Well, that's true. We don't know yet. Maybe we'll find out during the show. Hold on for that. Well, still coming up, a Labour MP says that people putting up English flags are extremists who are trying to mark their territory.
What an outrageous thing to say.
It is.
But up next, children are returning to school this week, so we're asking why so many kids still from poor, white, working-class families are being expelled and excluded.
But first, if you're still in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello there. It's remaining unsettled across parts of Central Europe as we go for the next few days. Either side, plenty of dry and sunny weather to be had. There could be a few showers on Tuesday across parts of the Canaries, but still plenty of dry and fine weather to be had. And for much of Iberia, actually plenty of sunshine around. But then we come back into the risk of some severe thunderstorms across parts of Italy and southern France. But then for much of Greece and Turkey, it's back to the sunshine with temperatures in places here reaching the low 30s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
You're going to have a lovely app. You can do everything online. You'll have, as a senior citizen, you'll have no problems with the NHS ever again. Isn't that wonderful?
Well, it would be if it were true, but as we got used to with this Labour government, if you scratch the surface a little bit, that the assertion that this is a plan for everyone is patently a nonsense, because if, like me, and the literally, no exaggeration, Nigel, hundreds of thousands of people like me who have either vascular dementia or Alzheimer's, any form of dementia, and there are several kinds, the app is simply not fit for purpose. First of all, you have to put in your email address, then you have to put in a password, and if you get it slightly wrong and think, oh, hang on a moment, it's not sausages and apples, it's carrots and cabbages, and you want to quickly change it so you can carry on, it's terribly complicated. And if you've got dementia, or if you're slightly older, but perhaps not with dementia, or just have a mental issue, sometimes you get digital problems, you get a letter wrong or a number in the wrong place, and you cannot get hold of the prescriptions you talk about. You cannot look at your appointments record. It's just inaccessible. And as far as the community hubs, or as you and I used to call them when we were growing up, cottage hospitals almost. That's great. We've got a brilliant GP surgery just down the road that has nurses, has a brilliant pharmacy, and looks after Sally and me extremely well. So I'm really pleased about that, and they're just a terrific team.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's nearly 10 to 10. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Now, millions of children returning to school this week, and Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson is urging parents to do more about their bad behaviour and poor attendance.
Well, figures have shown that 1 in 10 of the poorest white working-class pupils are suspended from school every year.
And just 60% of teachers expect to be in the same profession in 3 years' time. Remember, last year, in 2023-2024, 42,000 teachers left the profession.
Gosh. Well, I used to be a teacher. I left 10 years ago, so I'm a bad example.
Right, there we are.
Well, we're joined now by Joanna Rees, who's another former teacher. Joanna, good morning and welcome to the show. It's a big week for pupils and teachers and parents, but this is astonishing news that 10% of the poorest white children are probably going to be excluded this year. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's an absolute tragedy, in fact. How terribly sad that these children are having their education diminished in that way. And we have to really look at why this is happening. Why is it happening to this particular cohort of children? To be honest, I think there are two things that are involved with this. And I think the first is probably undiagnosed neurodivergence, things like dyslexia, dyspraxia, Asperger's. When a child starts school, if that's not identified fairly early on and they see their peers learning to do their letters, writing their names, reading the Oxford Reading Tree or whatever it may be, making sense of these words on the page. Others, ADHD, if they find it really difficult to concentrate. If that's not identified, it then can't be addressed, and it needs to be addressed. It can be, it's something that can be sorted out, and it makes their progress through school so much easier, rather than being left as being the kid that just can't cope in the classroom or the troublemaker. If there's a cause of that's a neurodivergence, get it addressed quickly. And I think perhaps these are the families that don't know that it can be addressed. They think maybe maybe the parents failed at school. Maybe they think it's therefore inevitable that their child is doing the same, rather than that there's a reason behind it that can be addressed. So I think that's one reason. I think there's a second reason as well, which is expectation. I think that if you see education as being a means for social mobility, if you, from a lower income bracket, if you can see that your education can lead you somewhere to move you out of that, to give you a different kind of life, to give you a life with a little bit more money, a few more choices, you're going to take it more seriously. If you feel education isn't taking you anywhere anyway, or if the parents feel that way with younger children, then I think it just makes it so much harder to get into school and really focus and crack on, which is really all we want. We want everyone to be able to seize their opportunities when they can.
As part of this story, I was staggered to read a statistic which said that 7 minutes in every 30 minutes in the school classroom is wasted because of disruption, which amounts to kids are losing 45 days a year because of disruption. Now, I don't want to do a blame game here, but suggest to me a lot of the problem there must be with mum and dad at home who is sending Johnny or Jill, whoever, into that classroom, who just have no comprehension about how to behave properly.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, that can be for lots of different reasons, but absolutely, I know as a former teacher, I'm sure Miriam would absolutely know as well, that when you've got one child in the classroom causing all sorts of trouble, it makes it hard for everyone to learn. It makes it hard for the teacher to teach. It makes it hard for the children to learn. I imagine parents this morning who are hearing from Bridget Phillipson that the government wants them to do more at home to crack down on their children's behaviour are probably thinking, oh my goodness, what more can I do? And why don't you get around here, Bridget, on a Sunday night at 6 o'clock and see how you manage? But I think that there is quite a lot to it. Life has changed so much for families. It's not
but Joanna, one of
the
the biggest changes, and we're going to have to be really brief, is that nearly half of children now grow up without a dad, and that has a significant impact on behaviour, doesn't it?
Well, I think, there's a lot in that. I think that particularly teenage boys need a male role model, and they're flexing their muscles literally and figuratively. They're pushing back.
Joanna, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to leave it there. We are out of time. I should not have asked you that last question.
It's a good question.
Anyway, we're going to that, but lots more coming up after the break, including more on that breaking news, I'm sure. A reshuffle?
A reshuffle. And, of course, our interview with Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader.
spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Well, the first day of autumn is set to start on a rather unsettled note, and for some of us actually quite a wet picture as we go out the door this first thing this morning. We've got some heavy rain across parts of Scotland. We do have a warning in force during the first part of the morning. Could be some tricky driving conditions out there, but that will move away, and generally for a lot of us today it is going to be a day of sunshine and scattered showers. Some of these showers will be potentially quite heavy, maybe the odd rumble of thunder too, maybe also some hail mixed into some of the heavier showers, but they'll be brought in on a fairly brisk wind, so they will move through fairly steadily as we go through the course of the day, and in any brighter moments we will see highs reaching around 20 or 21 degrees. So as we finish off Monday afternoon, we continue that mix of sunshine and showers across much of England and Wales. The showers may be beginning to fade away a little bit across the east. Very similar story for Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland really. Continuation of the showers, most frequent across more western districts of the countries, with again some of these showers still on the heavy side. But I think overall, hopefully, a slightly drier commute for some of us in Scotland compared to the journey to work or school this morning. So into the nighttime period, a lot of eastern areas turn in relatively dry with some clearer skies here, but further west continuing to see some showers, and then later on in the night a band of more persistent rain arrives into the very far southwestern corner. For most of us, maybe temperatures are a little bit lower compared to last night, but I think most towns and cities still staying up into double figures. So for most of us on Tuesday, we do start off with some sunshine, but down towards the west, this rain will continue to spread its way eastward. So overall, quite a wet picture for parts of England and Wales during Tuesday. Further north across Scotland, Northern Ireland and the far north of Northern England, we continue that mix of sunshine and scattered showers. And for most of us, temperatures around average for early September, potentially peaking around 20 or 21 degrees.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A83 at Butterbridge is shut in both directions due to a weather-related incident causing debris on the road. Motorists are advised to find alternate routes and anticipate longer journey times. On the M6 southbound between Junction 19 and Junction 18, a broken down vehicle is causing delays with one of 4 lanes closed. In Greater London, the M4 spur southbound between Junction 4 and Junction 4A is experiencing congestion, causing delays of approximately 10 minutes. And on the trains, there is a disruption between Theale and Newbury and between Ash and Guildford. In northern regions, buses are replacing trains between Corkickle and Whitehaven. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Monday the 1st of September. We're live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
So we've got some breaking news. Sir Keir Starmer is launching a Downing Street reshuffle. He's created a new role for Darren Jones, who's moving away from Chief Secretary to the Treasury to become Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, a new role completely.
That's right, Andrew, and making him effectively the Deputy Prime Minister, a huge boost here for an MP rarely known, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago in politics. A big moment here in Downing Street, and we're told by Number 10 this will turbocharge this government, which is way behind, of course, to the polls, behind Nigel Farage's Reform UK.
And speaking of Reform UK, the Reform Party will unveil plans to save billions of pounds in government waste this morning. We'll be hearing live from Deputy Leader Richard Tice and also former Chairman Zia Youssef.
I'm also going to bring you a live interview with Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party leader, in this hour, after Nigel Farage says a Reform government would deport more than 600,000 illegal migrants. We'll ask her what she's going to do about the problem.
And elsewhere, Parliament returns today as the Home Secretary pledges to reform the asylum system. The government's plan for change includes a promise to clear the backlog of cases and to tighten rules on family members being allowed to join migrants.
A £1.7 billion project in limbo. The A5 connects Northern Ireland from Londonderry through Omagh to Ballygawley.
And there's anger among locals as a major motorway project in Northern Ireland has been put on hold over net zero environmental concerns.
And we'll get reaction to the news that Queen Camilla fought off a man who tried to grope her when she was a teenager. So, Andrew, before the break, we were talking about that news that was released yesterday, that astonishing 1 in 10 poor white children are probably going to be excluded from school this year. At least that was the case last year.
Yeah, and the research shows as well that if they are regularly excluded from school, they're most likely to spend a lot of their life on benefits.
Yeah.
So it really affects their chances right from the outset. So what's going to be done about it?
And I do understand what our guest was saying, that the last thing parents want to hear from the Education Secretary is make sure your children behave better. But as a former teacher, I do think there's something in that. When kids turn up to school and they can't respect basic rules, and when parents don't back you up, when you tell the child off and the parent rings up and says, how dare you tell my child off? I mean, teachers can't win really in those circumstances, can they?
That's why so many are leaving the profession.
Yeah.
42,000 left the profession in the last year. Staggering. As ever, we want to know what you think. Send your views, post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/yoursay. But first, here's the news with Sophia Hill.
Miriam, thank you. A very good morning. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your top stories. Breaking this morning, Sir Keir Starmer has reshuffled his Downing Street team, appointing Darren Jones as Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, a newly created role aiming to turbocharge the government. He'll be based in Number 10 and oversee work across the government to deliver the PM's priorities. James Murray takes over as Treasury Chief to the Secretary, while Dan Tomlinson becomes Treasury Exchequer Secretary. It follows Sir Keir's recent moves to bring in Baroness Minouche Shafiq, the former Columbia University president, as his Chief Economic Advisor. The Home Secretary is pledging the biggest overhaul of Britain's borders and asylum system in years, as ministers try to bring order to what they're calling a chaotic legacy. Yvette Cooper says the measures will include tougher cooperation with France, more specialist police units and increased coastal patrols. She's also promising more arrests, the seizure of boats and engines, and a crackdown on smuggling networks, including removing thousands of social media accounts. Plans to clear the appeals backlog, expand detention and speed up removals have also been confirmed. However, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp doesn't believe that the government realises the severity of the situation.
They don't seem to recognise we have a full-blown
migration crisis on our hands. On Labour's watch, the numbers crossing the channel on small boats are up about 40% since last year. This year, 2025, it's been the worst year in history for small boat crossings. The government are in denial, and all they're doing is tinkering around the edges. Apart from fixing the problem, the only way to fix the problem is to remove everybody who crosses the channel illegally immediately the minute their feet touch dry land.
Queen Camilla has revealed that she fought off a man who attacked her when she was on a train as a teenager. According to a new book about the monarchy, the Queen told Boris Johnson about the attempted indecent assault during his time as London mayor. She said it happened when she was around 16 or 17 years old and was travelling to Paddington. When the man tried to touch her, she took off her shoe and hit him before reporting him to the police. The Queen has long campaigned against sexual abuse and domestic violence, vowing last year to keep trying to end it. And breaking this morning, at least 622 people have been confirmed dead and more than 1,500 injured in an earthquake that struck eastern Afghanistan. Officials have said that houses have been reduced to rubble following the 6.0 magnitude quake. According to the reports, the region is mountainous, meaning that information on the earthquake is trickling out slowly. In Kabul, health authorities said that rescuers were racing to reach remote hamlets in an area with a long history of earthquakes and floods. Now, the BBC is facing questions over transparency after doctors went on air to discuss new weight loss drugs but failed to disclose to viewers the thousands of pounds that they were receiving from pharmaceutical companies. GB News can exclusively reveal. Two leading obesity specialists appeared on BBC Radio 4's You and Yours to explain the benefits of so-called skinny jabs, such as Ozempic and Mounjaro. But no mention was made to the viewers of the financial links and the fact that they had been paid by the manufacturers of the drugs. Tapping in and out on your phone could be the future of train travel. For the first time, a location tracking ticketing system is being tested on East Midlands Railway between Leicester, Derby and Nottingham from today onwards. Passengers will check in and out with an app, with more trials coming to Yorkshire later on in the month. And storm season's first names are in, and Amy, Bram and Chandra are at the top of the list. They've been revealed after more than 50,000 suggestions from the public. The Met Office, alongside with Irish and Dutch weather forecasters, say that many entries honoured loved ones or even favourite pets. It comes as today sees the end of meteorological summer, as forecasts predict cooler temperatures, rain and wind across the country. Familiar face from the Met Office, Alex Deacon, explains the importance of naming storms.
To get people's attention when potentially severe weather is on the way. By naming a storm, we get more chatter on social media and we get more headlines in traditional media as well. And it's all about that notification, getting people to understand that severe weather coming means they're more likely to act.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour, but now it's back to Andrew and Miriam.
Hello, welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with me, Miriam Cates, and Andrew Pearce. People have been getting in touch, Andrew, on Your Say. Lots of discussion about behaviour in schools. And I'm trying to find, I had a brilliant one to read out and now I've lost it. Ah, yes, Leslie says, fine the parents for every hour lost to bad behaviour.
Well, it's an interesting idea, isn't it? Because look, if 7 minutes in every 30 is lost to bad behaviour, that is an amazing figure. 45 days a year, you might as well not send your child to school because they're not going to get any education done because, as our guest said, it could be just one child who's disruptive. Normally it's more than one. You were in a classroom. Would it be just one, or would he or she...
Well, there's several, and there's lots of different types of bad behaviour, isn't there? There's the kind of extreme throwing things, violent reactions, those kind of things. But it's the low-level behaviour is just as disruptive. Like children who talk over you or shout out, because every time that happens, you have to stop what you're saying and stop what you're explaining, and it is unbelievably disruptive. And I remember, some lessons you'd only get through half of what you'd planned just because of that very low-level disruption. But
I have to say, I was a terrible chatterbox at school.
I think I was too, Andrew. But
yeah, but
well, everybody has a seating plan now. You get told where to sit and moved if you don't.
But also, particularly if these are younger children, if they arrive. I mean, I was talking to a teacher recently. You'll know about this, of course. She said the problem is when you discipline the child or complain to the child, the parent comes to school, and this particular teacher told me she's been spat at by parents.
Goodness. Yeah.
Astonishing.
Because
the respect for the teacher
has
has disintegrated.
That's right, and in the past...
respect for all institutions has disintegrated.
You used to get told off at school and then you'd get a double telling off at home, whereas now it's the opposite, isn't it?
I never, ever wanted a letter home.
No.
It never, ever happened, actually, because it would have been World War III.
At least with letters you could tear them up, but now with emails, there's no way of stopping it.
Well, that's what Miriam Cates did.
I never did that, of course. I knew people who did.
What Miriam did next.
We'll never know, Andrew, you'll never know. Well, should we move back to that breaking news now? And Sir Keir Starmer has launched a Downing Street reshuffle.
It's a mini reshuffle, I think, very small. Yeah.
A tiny reshuffle.
Yeah.
Moving Darren Jones from the Treasury to the Cabinet Office as Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, which is a new role that's been created by Number 10.
So critics are already speculating why the PM has chosen to move the Labour MP from the Treasury. Apparently his job is to enforce the Prime Minister's priorities. What are his priorities? Well, maybe someone who can tell us is Chris Hope, who's our political editor. Chris, an interesting move here. What does this say about, as Andrew has just said, the Prime Minister's political priorities?
Well, it's a response, Miriam and Andrew, isn't it, to the party's dreadful position in the polls. 20 points against Reform UK on 35 points, just 3 points ahead of the Tory party. And they're, of course, being condemned, some would say rightly so, for 14 years in government when they failed to do much on migration, and the economy's barely budged. That's why you're seeing Nigel Farage benefit, and that's why we're seeing what they're calling a rewiring of this government. Now, the names aren't that well known to viewers, but the best known is probably Darren Jones. Now, he was formerly the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. He was in the news a few months ago by saying he saw women and children on small boats arriving here. He then rode back from that position slightly, I think, later that day. That was a bit of a drama on the BBC Question Time. He's now the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. Now, the issue here, I think, is that sounds a bit like a Deputy Prime Minister, but of course that role is held by Angela Rayner. So how that relationship plays out is fascinating. This Chief Secretary to the PM role is a new job, a new Cabinet job. It's going to be based in the Cabinet Office, working directly to the Prime Minister. Where does that leave Angela Rayner? That is a question unanswered at the moment. James Murray, he's bumped up one to be the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and Dan Tomlinson, who was well known to viewers as a kind of red wall Labour MP, he becomes the number 4 in the Treasury, the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. Also, there's Baroness Shafiq. She's now also a minister and also the Chief Economic Advisor. And behind the scenes, a guy called Tim Allen, who Andrew will know well from the old days of the Blair government. He's back in as a senior role in communications to try and refocus this government. And they're saying to us in quite language which, you know, you might raise eyebrows about. They're saying this restructure marks a turbocharging of Keir Starmer's next phase of government. They say it's their next step in its Whitehall rewiring. Number 10 is evolving at the centre as a command and control function. Behind that black door, a command and control function. These new structures and a new minister will get an increasing government grip and focus on how Whitehall operates. And we go back, don't we, to that criticism by that guy again, Dominic Cummings, who was, of course, Chief Advisor to Boris Johnson. He said, this system around me is broken, this Whitehall system, where it looks here like the Labour government is now almost agreeing with that and wants to rewire it and make it better.
But what I think really is, what is this government doing? What are its big policy initiatives? Votes for 16-year-olds? Well, that's not going to get them talking big time in the dog and duck. What else are they doing? You know, the economy is flatlining. There's no economic growth. We're going to have a budget in the autumn, which is going to be very, very unpopular. We're talking to Kemi Badenoch in a moment. Chris, she's going to warn that Labour are planning to put capital gains tax on house sales. So it wouldn't matter how they rewire the Downing Street machine. If they're not doing things which are popular and which the country needs, it's going to make no difference to their poll ratings.
And that's right. I think those remarks by Darren Jones about playing down the issue of the small boats crisis will be a problem for him. I think you've got a guy there who's now going to deliver the PM's agenda across Whitehall and doesn't really say, by his own comments there, it's a big issue. We know how big that small boats crisis is. We're looking at probably 50,000 crossings this year, a record, 29,000 already crossed so far this year. Number 10 says they want to refocus on what they say are the country's priorities, Andrew, to answer your question. solution. That is growth that people feel in their pockets, secure borders, and getting the NHS back on its feet. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. But the issue of secure borders, I've been seeing reporting over the weekend that it's time that the PM actually did almost a daily meeting on small boats and to made much more of an effort to try and control those crossings across our southern shores.
Chris, you mentioned Dominic Cummings and his reflections that Whitehall is far too powerful, and he's also said that number 10 is not powerful enough, and it seems to me that this is exactly what the Prime Minister is trying to do now, to beef up number 10. Now, do you think there's an element of, yes, of course, the Labour Party's critics will say that it doesn't have a vision, it's not managing the economy or immigration competently, but isn't it also true that it's become incredibly difficult to get anything done in the British government now, and Labour are struggling just as much as the Conservatives did?
It seems that way. I mean, the PM is recognising in the second year of his time in office he needs to get a tighter grip on this function. But I've been around politics for 30 years, as you both have. I mean, I remember when they were trying to create a kind of hub and spoke command and control operation under Gordon Brown when he was Prime Minister. Before that, the policy unit was brought in by Tony Blair to increase that's a grip on government. There's that problem, I think, that it seems that Whitehall officials just go slow when they want to and speed up when they want to, and it's trying to make sure that you can force the system to do more and deliver on the priorities. And of course, the one at the moment right now is the issue of immigration, both legal and illegal migration, and also dealing with the NHS. And of course, we are focusing already, aren't we, about the issues of this budget, probably to be announced this week. Probably second week of November, I expect, because it needs 10 weeks for the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, to check those figures. Darren Jones, though, of course, former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, he'll have his own views on tax and spend, and also, of course, against maybe what Rachel Reeves wants. So we are creating more bosses of this government, and with that may become more tensions.
I was to say, and on that point, just finally, Chris, more tensions, as you've already said, because as soon as I read the title, I thought, Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. Isn't that what the Deputy Prime Minister's role is? Now, the Deputy Prime Minister is in a lot of political difficulties over the purchase of her flat in Hove. This appointment is going to cause even more tension with her and her department. Maybe that's the plan.
Yeah. Well, we don't know. Of course, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, she's the only person elected to that role by party members. She can't be moved from being Deputy Leader, so you can't really demote her from being Deputy Prime Minister. But yeah, all sorts of question marks about how this will play out. Will there be tensions? Will it look like he's being sidelined from making key choices? Darren Jones is the new golden boy of this Labour government. He's the rising star. He is now, I'm sure, jumping in the polls as a future successor, to Keir Starmer, way over other people, and that's why in all the politics the knives might be out for him and what he's been saying in the past. That's why his role is so important. I mean, when you see the Deputy Prime Minister giving PMQs, what's Darren Jones thinking? What's he up to? So I think there's lots of areas here. And just finally, by the way, I'm fascinated by the fact that he has been appointed to the Cabinet, 2 new roles to the Cabinet. Normally those roles in the Cabinet are limited by the Cabinet manual that we have that runs government in this country. I wonder if someone else has been bumped out of Cabinet to allow Darren Jones in there as Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister.
And just finally, Chris, of course, these rumours are now starting to circulate about whether Sir Keir Starmer's premiership can survive the Parliament, which is quite extraordinary. We are very clear about the Conservatives' mechanisms for getting rid of leaders. They've done it enough. What is the mechanism through which Labour MPs could change leader?
From memory, it's around 20% of MPs, of Labour MPs, must sign some letters of no confidence or express a requirement to change leader. That's around 70 or 80 MPs to make that happen. We're a long way short of that. And I think any talk of this government not lasting the course is a bit silly because of the scale of their majority, 170. The problem they've got is they are facing the hard deadline of that election by 2029. And looking at those numbers that they're polling last week, putting Reform UK in the mid-30s, that is well over what they need for a landslide. Once you get that high in the polls over your rivals, the whole system switches and you get a very big but a shallow landslide, as we saw with Labour last July. And that could happen to Reform unless this government behind me, frankly, gets its act together.
Fascinating. All right, Chris, that's Chris Hope, our GBNews political editor.
Well, it's time now for our latest Great British giveaway, and it's our biggest prize to date, worth over £104,000. You could win a 4-berth motorhome worth over £74,000, plus a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash. Here's Hayley Sparks with all the details.
It's our biggest, greatest Great British giveaway to date. Your chance to win a prize package worth over £104,000.
You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primero motorhome. With thanks to Marquis Leisure, this 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas, sky view roof lights, and has all the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model.
We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure any adventures in your motorhome are taken in style.
For a chance to win the motorhome and cash, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. The winner will be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 10th November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, still ahead, a Labour MP says that people who are putting up English flags are extremists, trying to mark their territory.
What's he there, a dog?
It sounds like it.
Cocking a leg?
No.
For God's sake.
I think we need a picture of a dog with a flag. If you've got one, gbnews.com, your say.
And up next, we're going to be talking about the latest in the anti-Rayner sleaze crisis, which just will not go away, try as they might, these Labour ministers. This is Britain's Newsroom.
On GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have you seen the President yet?
Morning, guys. No, not yet. We're just in the press room behind the scenes. I've got my Trump Turnberry coffee cup, though, just to prove to you that I really am here. We're waiting here basically until we get the nod to run out, hopefully to see Donald Trump and Keir Starmer together. These occasions, I'm realising, are a little bit sort of hurry up and wait. We think that the Prime Minister and the President might be meeting outdoors today. Yesterday, you might have seen Trump with Ursula von der Leyen in the amazing ballroom, in the grand ballroom here at Turnberry. Well, the weather is surprisingly nice for Scotland. The sun is out. It isn't raining. So there's a chance that we will get to talk to these two world leaders, but we won't be in the ballroom. We'll be outside, I think, on the golf course. We're just waiting to hear.
And what's the atmosphere like, Bev? Is there a lot of excitement?
I think amongst the press, they're all fairly used to this sort of thing. I mean, I still feel a little bit like a competition winner because I came on Air Force One, and I'm still really excited about the whole ordeal. But I think a lot of people here have done this sort of thing before. You know, we've had an influx this morning of the British press. So I'm with the international call who came over on Air Force One, and there are about 13 of us. But the British press are here as well today. They're all obviously keen to get their own questions into Starmer. It will be that setting where, you know, we just all go for it if we can and throw a question out in that direction. I got lucky on Friday when we were on the runway at Prestwick Airport, Glasgow Prestwick Airport, when we landed on Air Force One, and I asked him about immigration, and of course he gave us that line about the fact that Europe has to get its act together.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
10:24, Britain's Newsroom, Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates. We've got our panel. We've got the founding chairman of Global Britain Centre, Emma Bogle, and former Labour advisor Matthew Talbot. Matthew, we have to start with you. You know Angela Rayner well. You do know her well. You like her.
I like Angela, yeah.
Why isn't she just transparent and clear all this mess up about which property was designated in which way, and did she avoid legally £40,000 worth of stamp duty on the purchase of this property and home? Because it's not going to go away. And ministers I've talked to privately know it's not going away, and they're saying we need her to be a bit more open, but she won't be.
So it's a fair question, because my advice always as a comms person was if you leave a vacuum, other people will fill it, especially those that don't necessarily want you to succeed. And we've seen that from the Tories seizing a bit of red meat and going, here's an opportunity to sort of maybe have an impact on what she has or hasn't done. We'll, you know, talk about an ethics investigation. The truth is, I don't know. I think largely from you know, reports over the weekend, it's because Angela sort of finds these stories a bit humorous of like the obsession of, and it is a bit odd. I mean, you know, where we're from, the idea of where you living, how many houses have you got, who you living with, how much money have you got. It's just a bit odd.
No, it's if she dodged stamp duty. Because she's a big critic of tax avoidance is legal, but she was a big critic of tax avoidance in opposition. She was a big critic of Jeremy Hunt when he bought some properties and appeared to have avoided stamp duty. She said, look at him exploiting Tory tax loopholes. Is this Angela Rayner exploiting the rules to save herself £40,000? Because we know she got quite a lot of financial advice from a very upmarket wealth management company, which suggests she did take tax advice. But perhaps she should have taken advice, and does any of this pass the smell test?
No, it probably doesn't. And, you know, listen, I'll always come here and be honest, as much as I like Angela or not. I think you have to be potentially open to the charge of hypocrisy, of going, you know... I don't necessarily think on the stamp stuff. I think one of the biggest causes of people not being able to get on the housing ladder is people owning multiple houses.
And she's made that point.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're going to say stuff in opposition, you've got to be wary. I suppose what she would no doubt say is, because she's put the house in Ashton in a trust, therefore trying to avoid paying inheritance tax. Her family's the most important thing. She wants to ensure the kids get all of it, no doubt, and that'll be the sort of thing that many people up and down the country do. Whether it, you know, passes the smell test, as you would say, I don't know. I do think, however, this will go away. I do think this will blow over.
Come on, if you can legally avoid paying £40,000 of tax, you'd be a bit daft not to, wouldn't you?
Well, I mean, then she shouldn't be calling herself a socialist, should she? But
Very quickly, sorry, not to... Angela Rayner's never called herself a socialist. Angela Rayner voted for Andy Burnham over Jeremy Corbyn.
MP, well,
yeah, we're not a socialist party. As much as I wish we were, we're not. I wish we were, we're not. Definitely.
I mean, look at it this way. Who can forget? This is the same MP who charged £149 to the taxpayer for her AirPods just a few years ago. But more than that, I think they say if you scratch beneath the surface, Miriam, there's a bigger thing at play here. This is basically a Rayner on a chicken run to a safer Labour seat. She's running scared of reform. But more than that, she's also on manoeuvres to remove Starmer. She's putting in legislations to make sure that Sadiq Khan can't run as an MP while still being mayor, so that he can't be a challenger to her possible challenge to Starmer.
I think it's more Andy Burnham.
Well, Andy Burnham,
Mayor of Greater Manchester, much more of a threat to Starmer than Sadiq Khan.
She's got two challengers for her possible bid to be Labour leader and Prime Minister, Khan in London and Burnham in Manchester. But also the fact that, you know, look, Labour is in utter chaos right now. You've seen this morning Darren Jones, now former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, now being brought into number 10, because I feel that Starmer is losing a complete grip of operations at number 10. Nothing is sticking, nothing is working. He's failing on all metrics. And you know what? I don't think Angela Rayner is really helping that Labour ship.
No, but I think it's damaging. Rayner's been it's been a damaging few days for Labour over this.
I think whoever's putting it about is obviously aiming to damage her because she's the clear favourite.
But do you think it's Labour people doing it?
I've heard this over the weekend, and listen, it would suit lots of people to maybe do that who have their eyes on if Keir goes, you know, in the next parliamentary term. I don't know how they would know.
Matthew, that just in a year's time of being in government, we're looking at, you know, a real, well, I called it the sandcastle majority at the time, that we're seeing, looking at a Labour Party leader and Prime Minister being booted out by his own party.
Yeah, it is an indictment, and that's why some of us saw it coming and thought I'd rather do the TV instead of thing. I don't want to be involved. So you agree that he sold
the British people a pup at the last election?
I don't think he has. I think he'd have to know what he was doing. I think he would have to know what he was doing to sell people a pup.
That's the theory behind this new appointment today, is that by boosting Number 10, perhaps he'll be able to get his message across.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, we're going to get the fourth different director of communications in 5 years. We've had people come in for a year and come and go. Darren Jones has never served in government, but he's apparently going to change the whole way Number 10 works.
But what message is he's going to sell? Because I don't know what the message is.
I don't know, that everybody coming in...
change, Andrew.
Right. Yeah, well, listen, nothing's going to change. He'll do the grand effect of absolutely nothing. We still don't have a homelessness minister weeks on, and homelessness is going backwards. We're totally all at sea. The thing that would probably help is when 6 in 10 Labour voters in the Times this morning said that they don't think tax rises are viable, and that the majority of Labour voters don't not only want Reeves out, but Starmer out, is clear the decks, somebody else.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, Aman, I'm afraid.
We've got a very big interview coming up with Kemi Badenoch. The boys will be back, though. Stay listening to us. It's because we've got a 60-second news update now with Sophia Hill.
Very good morning. The top story is just after 10:30. Sir Keir Starmer has reshuffled his Downing Street team, appointing Darren Jones as Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, a newly created role aiming to turbocharge the government. The Home Secretary is pledging the biggest overhaul of Britain's borders and asylum system in years, as ministers try to bring order to what they're calling a chaotic legacy. Queen Camilla has revealed that she fought off a man who attacked her on a train when she was a teenager. According to a new book about the monarchy, the Queen told Boris Johnson about the attempted indecent assault during his time as London Mayor. News from this morning that more than 800 people have been confirmed dead, with more than 2,800 injured in a 6.0 magnitude earthquake that struck eastern Afghanistan. And storm season's first names are in, as Amy, Bram and Chandra are at the top of the list. They've been revealed after more than 50,000 suggestions from the public, with many entries honouring loved ones or even your favourite pet. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Well, coming up next, we'll be hearing live from Tory leader Kemi Badenoch. So don't go anywhere. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Well, the first day of autumn is set to start on a rather unsettled note, and for some of us actually quite a wet picture as we go out the door this first thing this morning. We've got some heavy rain across parts of Scotland. We do have a warning in force during the first part of the morning. Could be some tricky driving conditions out there, but that will move away, and generally for a lot of us today it is going to be a day of sunshine and scattered showers. Some of these showers will be potentially quite heavy, maybe the odd rumble of thunder too, maybe also some hail mixed into some of the heavier showers. But they'll be brought in on a fairly brisk wind, so they will move through fairly steadily as we go through the course of the day. And in any brighter moments, we will see highs reaching around 20 or 21 degrees. So as we finish off Monday afternoon, we continue that mix of sunshine and showers across much of England and Wales. The showers may be beginning to fade away a little bit across the east. Very similar story for Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland really. Continuation of the showers, most frequent across more western districts of the countries, with again some of these showers still on the heavy side. But I think overall, hopefully, a slightly drier commute for some of us in Scotland compared to the journey to work or school this morning. So into the nighttime period, a lot of eastern areas turn in relatively dry with some clearer skies here, but further west continuing to see some showers, and then later on in the night a band of more persistent rain arrives into the very far southwestern corner. For most of us, maybe temperatures are a little bit lower compared to last night, but I think most towns and cities still staying up into double figures. So for most of us on Tuesday, we do start off with some sunshine, but down towards the west, this rain will continue to spread its way eastward. So overall, quite a wet picture for parts of England and Wales during Tuesday. Further north across Scotland, Northern Ireland and the far north of Northern England, we continue that mix of sunshine and scattered showers. And for most of us, temperatures around average for early September, potentially peaking around 20 or 21 degrees.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Motorists should note that the northbound slip road at junction 2A on the M73 is closed due to roadworks. Follow diversions, expect longer journey times. In Hampshire, westbound travellers on the M27 should be cautious of a broken down vehicle between junction 10 and 9. In Greater London, the M4 spur southbound between junction 4 and 4A has delays of around 10 minutes. And on the trains, Great Western Railway services between Theale and Newbury are disrupted. Buses replace northern trains between Corkickle and Whitehaven. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Well, it's 10:35 and you're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Well, the boys are still with us because we're waiting for Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, Eamon Bogle and Labour advisor Matthew Talbot.
Former. Don't tie me to any of this chaos.
Sorry. Yeah.
I don't want to Rayner gets it.
Rayner's best friend was it?
Not only Rayner gets it.
So we were trading on the last.
Fascinating book being serialised in the Times, which reveals that Camilla, as a teenage girl, on a train, took the law into her own hands when a pervy bloke's hand got a bit too close. Tell us more.
Well, the best of British, isn't it? I mean, isn't it just? I mean, you'd I mean, can you imagine, you know, a young Queen Camilla at 16, 17, that some guy tried to move his hand further and further, and she sort of takes off her shoes and she gives him one in the ghoulie.
That's what stilettos are for.
Yeah,
exactly.
And she thought that's what her mum had always told her to do, so she followed that advice. And she very sensibly then, she got off the train, raised it with the police, and he was arrested.
Yes, indeed. And now, can you imagine that happening today? You'd probably get told to text, what is it, was it 1161?
Yeah.
But it's
you might have been done for assault because she whacked him in the you-know-wheres with her shoe.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it, Andrew? And this is a real sort of indictment of the sign of our times, that how things were back in that day and how things are today. But more, delving a little bit more into the story, it's also shaped how she has gone on to really support sexual assault centres through her royal work, day in, day out. I think she does more than any other royal to help those who have been affected by the same thing.
What's interesting, Matthew, is that she doesn't really want any attention. She's never told this story herself to the public because she wants all the focus to be on those who have survived sexual abuse and the people that she's trying to support.
Yeah, and that's why I was a little bit unsure about how I feel about this, because she's potentially told Boris Johnson this is London Mayor in confidence.
It's because he was opening some rape
That's right.
Centres,
yeah, and she's been a fantastic advocate in the violence against women and girls sector over the last decade, and apparently this is where it sort of traces its time back to. I wish it was of a generation. I think we saw last weekend figures that said that there was a sexual assault every 3 hours on trains.
I mean, being bold enough to.
Oh, that I will agree on. Do you know, it reminds me of my great-gran years ago. There was a fella bothering my nana down the pub. She'd heard about it, wasn't having any of it, and took a shoe to the fella herself and went and did him in with the shoe. And he was so embarrassed and went down the pub he couldn't tell anyone that his mother-in-law had done him in.
Do you think there's a really important message here, which is that, yes, of course, we should be telling young women to call the police and to report these, absolutely. But shouldn't we also be preparing girls to potentially dissuade people by using violence if necessary? It's quite sensible.
Yes, but then I think the onus is on the bloke. Blokes shouldn't be doing it. And I think it's both sides. I do think, I think there's a great place for boxing and self-defence for lads, particularly those that are going on the wayside and being taught in schools.
We're going to go live to Kemi Badenoch. So, gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Kemi Badenoch joins us now. Good morning, Kemi Badenoch. Good morning.
It is raining in Surrey.
It's raining. Now you're on a housing estate. You're on a visit to a housing estate, Kemi Badenoch, which is significant because you're raising the warning flag that this Labour government under Rachel Reeves could have a pretty unpleasant shock in store for people who own their own homes. Most of us want to aspire to own their own homes by potentially putting capital gains tax on sales of people's properties.
Yes, that's right. And I've just been speaking to a group of people here in Surrey who are actually very, very worried about the cost of living. They are worried that taxes are going up yet again and they can't afford it. And all of this is happening because Labour have allowed a summer of speculation about what taxes are going to go up. The Treasury has been saying some things but not denying other things, and people believe that their properties are going to be taxed. Wealth taxes are a word that Labour use, but actually what it usually means is people's properties, people's businesses, their family homes. It makes it harder to own your own home, to buy your first home, and Conservatives will oppose them every step of the way.
So you're going to bring a vote on Wednesday to try and flush out potential Labour MPs who would oppose. It's a shame you can't bring a vote to stop the rain. But tell us more about what you're proposing on Wednesday and how you think that might stop potential tax rises in the budget.
Well, we need the government to be honest with people. They have been making a lot of noise about black holes. The truth is, they're the ones who created a black hole with their budget last year. They tax businesses who have shed loads of jobs. Unemployment has been rising every single month since Labour came into power. The economy is doing really badly under them, and now they're coming back for more. So we need them to be honest, and that is what the vote on Wednesday is about. Labour telling us exactly what it is they're going to do, but we're the only party that will defend home ownership.
The party might say is that actually one of the reasons for this black hole is the enormous rise in borrowing costs. We're now spending more than $100 billion a year on interest, and a huge driver of that was the huge amount of money that the Conservatives borrowed in the last Parliament for COVID. Surely the last government is also responsible for that budget deficit.
There was a budget deficit, but we had a plan to bring it down. We brought the deficit down every single year until COVID, and we were ready to bring it down again. And what we need to do is cut spending and live within our means. You'll remember a couple of months ago, we had a welfare bill that was supposed to cut spending, and what did Labour do? They voted to increase spending. They do not have the stomach to do what the country needs. We need to live within our means. The rider is getting bigger than the horse, and the Labour Party only wants to spend more, and Reform are joining them wanting to increase benefits. We're the only party that want to live within our means and get our economy back on track.
So Wednesday, if we get this right, Kemi, you will be voting to make sure the government don't scrap something called the private residence relief, which, if that is scrapped, which would then enable them to put on a variety of taxes on properties.
Basically, what Labour are doing are taxing the very people who are working hard, bringing in the wealth and prosperity of our country. What they should be doing is getting more people back into work. They don't know how to do that. And as we saw with the family farms tax, which has been absolutely disastrous for farming in this country, they are taxing what are assets, not income. Many people have assets, but they don't have income. And then when these taxes come in, they're actually forced to sell their properties. And then they want to tax, increase capital gains tax, which is one of the things they have not denied. It is all a big mess, and they are creating even more and more problems, a tax doom loop, because they borrow more, then they have to tax more, then businesses close, and then they go round and round and round again in circles. That needs to come to an end. It's time for us to cut spending.
Can we move on to immigration now, because it's now become the most important issue for most voters. Polls are showing even more than the economy and the NHS. Now, there's been a report out today from Policy Exchange that, by some leading lawyers, that shows that actually you could leave the ECHR without compromising the Northern Ireland Agreement. Now, the Conservatives, unlike Reform, are yet to come out and say you would leave the ECHR. Surely there should be no hesitation now. It can be the only answer, really, to stopping the small boats.
Well, we have said that we will make our announcement at conference. We have a proper plan. We have been doing the work. The policy exchange report is very interesting. I will take some time to look at that. I know that Lord Wolfson, who is doing our work on the ECHR, has already seen it. These are the things that we need to do in order to make sure that we come to the right conclusion, but also have a plan. Simply announcing that you're going to leave the ECHR with no plan is dishonest, and it is not the right thing for the country. What the country needs is a proper plan for how we are going to cut immigration, make sure we deport the people who are not supposed to be in our country, and bring back fairness.
Reform, as you know, Kemi, talked last week about opening what they call remote detention centres. Well, we know the Tories tried that last time. In fact, there was a detention centre proposed for the constituency of your shadow cabinet colleague James Cleverly, and he led the local opposition to it. Isn't the problem with these detention centres, great idea, let's bung them in detention centres, but nobody wants them in their own backyard?
Well, the real problem is that right now what we have are hotels smack bang in the middle of communities like Epping, and that's what's really, really getting people's backs up. When I was in Epping and I spoke to the parents there, they talked about their children being afraid to walk to school. People stopped not jogging in the parks anymore because there were men hiding in bushes. And the point I'm making is that it is not right for local communities to pay the price for the government's ineptitude. We had closed that hotel in Epping. We had been closing these migrant hotels. We had a removal scheme, the Rwanda plan, which Labour scrapped, and what they need to do is bring back a plan that will get people processed outside the country.
Now, many of our viewers will very much welcome that, but what would a Conservative government do about the many hundreds of thousands, perhaps even a million, undocumented migrants? So not people necessarily in the asylum system, but people who've overstayed their visa or with whom the Home Office has just lost touch. What would you do about those people should you come into power next time?
Well, we had a deportation bill, which we announced earlier this year, and this is why I've been telling people the Reform have been copying our homework. A lot of what they announced a couple of weeks ago was actually based on our deportation bill. We're not just making announcements, we're actually doing the work in Parliament, writing legislation, and one of the things we have said is that we will deport all the people who are here illegally. It has to happen. You should not be allowed to come into our country and disappear into the system. It is not fair on the taxpayer who has to pay for all of the people who are in our country, people getting benefits. We've talked about asylum centres, these hotels, all of the benefits that they get. This needs to stop. It is costing us too much money, and that is why we have a deportation bill disapplying the Human Rights Act, which is the root cause of a lot of these problems, disapplying the Human Rights Act for immigration cases and making sure that we can remove people who are not supposed to be here, especially those who are committing crimes.
Can we take you to the North Sea? Big story unveiled in one of the Sunday newspapers yesterday. Drill, baby, drill. Is that going to be the Tory mantra if you win the election? Much more, that you will reverse Labour, which wants to stop drilling in the North Sea. You will reverse that and resume drilling so we can produce our own oil and gas.
Very much so. It is extraordinary that we are now importing gas from places like Norway that are still drilling in the North Sea, while we stop drilling in the North Sea, in the same basin. This makes no sense whatsoever. This is not how we improve our environment, because we're still using the same amount of oil and gas. We need to make sure that we've got a plan where we use our resources, deliver our energy security, cheap, abundant energy, while making plans for the future at the same time.
But because the oil and gas is extracted by private companies, they're under no obligation to sell that into the UK market. And because it's sold on an international market, it wouldn't necessarily bring down energy prices, would it? Or would you compel those companies to sell into the UK?
Increasing supply brings down prices. By stopping our own supply, we are having an impact on the global market. But we're also creating a huge problem for our economy. All of those companies together employ hundreds of thousands of people. We are losing about 10,000 jobs, just with the loss of things like Grangemouth, for example, the Rosebank oil field licenses, which were not granted, hundreds of thousands of jobs are going to disappear. Those are people who are not going to be paying taxes. That's going to be yet another problem for the Treasury. And where is Rachel Reeves going to go? She's going to come to property taxes and all of these silly taxes that don't actually raise money but make the whole country poorer. So it is about more than energy. It is about our entire economy. Labour do not have a plan for the economy, and that's why they're making a lot of these decisions that are not joined up and are making all of us poorer.
Talking of taxes, do you think Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, has avoided property tax in her rather complicated domestic property arrangements? And if so, what should be done about it?
Well, I don't know the details of exactly what Angela has done. Those are questions she will need to answer herself. But when I've been talking to people in my constituency, what they've been saying is that it's the hypocrisy, because they're worried that property taxes are coming and she might be doing something to avoid them if she's got knowledge that the rest of us don't have. That is why it is very important that Labour comes clean about what it is they're going to do. Otherwise, people will be speculating about their own personal integrity.
Thank you so much, Kemi Badenoch. Really appreciate your time. Apologies for the weather, but hopefully you can get into the dry now.
Very good. That's Kemi Badenoch, the Leader of the Opposition. Thanks for joining us. Interesting. Punchy stuff. The panel are still here. Let's go to you first. I mean, punchy, particularly on property tax, that they are going to make this a big campaign. If Labour is going down, we're going to tax your property. Englishman's home to his castle, and a Scottishman's, and a Welshman's, and a Northern Ireland, by the way, not being racist here. But I mean, it would go to the heart of Tories with Thatcher's property-owning democracy.
Indeed it does, and the average man and woman out there, that's exactly what they aspire to have, you know, a home of their own, a place to build a family, and something to leave their family at the end of their life as working and earning. But look, this is more about the options that the government has in front of it. You know, it can either grow the GDP, grow the economy, level up jobs, level of opportunity, or, tax, borrow and bust, and that's exactly where it's heading.
The problem is, Matthew, that although this government has made itself deeply unpopular...
Certainly has.
One of the main reasons for that is... Well, there are two main reasons, aren't there? One is immigration, a problem that started under the last government. Yes, Labour have made it worse by scrapping Rwanda, but the last government didn't implement anything useful by the time it called an election. And secondly, the economy. And so much of that is actually years or even decades in the making. Successive governments overspending, over-borrowing. Now we're in this position where we've got a potential debt crisis. It's not an easy problem for Rachel Reeves to solve.
No, it's not. And as I said earlier, the Times reported today that 6 in 10 Labour voters do not think tax rises are acceptable, even in this climate. They think it's too much. My fear in opposition, the closer we got to an election, is we could have done all the best things in the world. We will run out of time come the next election, even if there is any gradual work. I will just add, at the end of Kemi Badenoch's interview there is why she's failing. Go for the jugular. You don't know the details of Angela Rayner's housing situation. It's been in the papers last 3 or 4 days. Go and get her if you're going to get it. Well, last 8, there we go. It's even worse. You're either going for her or you're not. To sort of tippy-tap her on, you go, well, she's got previous history. We know about it. You can say all sorts there. She's just fumbled the bag. That's ridiculous.
I guess, to be fair to her, what she's trying to say is because it's so complicated. Because she's made
very fair.
She also doesn't want to accuse her of doing something that's later found out.
You'd say it doesn't look good, wouldn't you?
She very fairly accused her of hypocrisy, and that's exactly the bottom line here. The average man and woman out there see Labour hypocrisy in this. You either call yourself a socialist, or I know, Matthew, you say you're not socialist anymore.
She's never said it.
But that's
never said it in her life.
Trading standards. What on earth is Labour supposed to stand for if it's not socialism?
Keir Starmer is a socialist, isn't he, by his own admission?
When he was a student, mate. What? When was this?
Everyone was the same.
First I've heard of it.
He said it.
He stands for whatever's going on that day. That's part of the problem.
I thought that was quite a robust interview by Kemi Badenoch.
She was very robust on asylum. But I think what is frustrating from many Conservative and Reform voters' point of view is that actually, during the passage of the Rwanda bill, Sir Bill Cash, Fretton Conservative, brought a number of amendments that would have excluded the ECHR provisions for the purposes of that bill that had Kemi and many other Cabinet Ministers supported, we would not be in this position now.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it, Miriam? I think most voters out there listening to Kemi this morning probably tend to agree with a lot of what she has to say, especially on immigration and all this Rwanda and all the rest of it. But the question they're asking themselves is, well, you know what, and this is a real trust problem that the Conservative Party faces now, which is that, well, you know, you had 14 years, well, maybe not 14, maybe 5. What did you do with it? And so people are a bit fed up with where British democracy has landed the country in.
I did Camilla Tominey's show yesterday, and I had, who was the Tory who came on? Alex Burkhart. I said, how can you say anything about this? Why is anybody going to listen to words you say when in 1 year, under Boris's watch, legal migration to this country was 1.2 million, a city the size of Birmingham, and you did nothing to stop the boats. They had Rwanda, and all right, the ECHR stopped that. I said, why didn't you just say to the ECHR, get stuffed, we're sending the plane to Rwanda? Well, they could have done it.
Indeed, and that's the thing we need, Andrew. We need the political will in this country to do so. President Trump has done it, we need to do it here in the UK.
Thank you very much. We'll see you again shortly.
We have to read this really boring statement.
An important.
Very important statement. I'll let you read it this time.
Thank you.
Because it's been the same statement we've had for the last week.
Well, I should know it off by heart now. Well, the Deputy Prime Minister paid the correct duty owed on the purchase entirely properly and in line with...
Stop snoring, Matthew.
Behaved on me.
Entirely in line. Come on. Any suggestion otherwise is entirely without basis.
Matthew,
There's no suggestion, Andrew, that she has not obeyed the law. I think it's very important.
Nobody's suggesting the Deputy Prime Minister has broken the law, but the law, it is all about perception and how it looks.
Well, we're being very fair this morning because we're next going to hear from some of Reform's biggest names. They've got a press conference about government waste. You're watching Britain's favourite newsroom on GB News.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Now, it's another day of sunshine and showers for many of us, but watch out because some of the showers could be packing quite a punch with some hail and thunder mixed in. We do have a relatively mature low pressure system just to the northwest of the UK, and it's this that's the driving force for the showery theme that we have across the country. Now, there are various fronts, and these fronts do indicate where we may see some slightly longer spells of showers merging into each other to make for some longer lasting rain, but most places seeing the showers coming through quite hit and miss, so there will be some drier, brighter, sunnier weather in between the showers, and in any sunshine, not feeling too bad. Temperatures in the high teens or low 20s for most of us, but there will be some blustery winds to watch out for as well. The showers are going to continue as we go through the end of the day. In fact, across parts of western Scotland, that's when we could see some of the heaviest ones, and there's a good chance that there could be some rumbles of thunder, even a bit of hail mixed in too. Similar across parts of Northern Ireland, some heavy showers as we go through this evening, and across much of England and Wales, fairly scattered, so some dry, sunny breaks in between them, but most of us at risk of seeing at least a few showers as we go through this evening. Then overnight, some places seeing the showers dying out, but across the parts of the northwest and actually down the western side of England and Wales, some showers will continue, and then a swathe of slightly more persistent rain pushing into parts of Devon and Cornwall later on in the night as well. Other places where we get the clearer weather may just about see some rural spots dropping to temperatures in mid-single figures, but towns and cities generally holding up in double digits. And then through tomorrow, a swathe, like I said, of very wet weather pushing across some southern parts, some heavy, perhaps even persistent rain. Could be some rumbles of thunder mixed in with this as it makes its way eastwards. Elsewhere, it's another day of sunshine and showers. The showers perhaps not quite as intense as today for many of us, although in the northwest there could still be some rumbles of thunder.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock, Andrew. We're live across the United Kingdom.
Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Now, Reform UK are going to unveil plans to save billions of pounds in government waste this morning. We'll be hearing live from Deputy Leader Richard Tice and also Zia Youssef in just a couple of minutes.
And breaking news, that reshuffle, Sir Keir Starmer has launched a mini Downing Street reshuffle, creating a new role for Darren Jones MP. He's no longer Chief Secretary to the Treasury. He is now Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. His task, to enforce the priorities of the Prime Ministers. Just if he knows what they are.
Sure he does. Well, the Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, joined us earlier, just before the break, and she came out swinging against Labour's tax plans. Here's what she had to say.
Basically, what Labour are doing are taxing the very people who are working hard, bringing in the wealth and prosperity of our country. What they should be doing is getting more people back into work. They don't know how to do that.
Elsewhere, Parliament returns today as the Home Secretary pledges to reform the asylum system. The government's plan for change includes a promise to clear the backlog of cases and to tighten rules on family members being allowed to join migrants.
A £1.7 billion project in limbo. The A5 connects Northern Ireland from Londonderry through Omagh to Ballygawley.
Well, anger among locals as a major motorway project in Northern Ireland is put on hold over net zero concerns.
And we're going to get a reaction to that extraordinary story that Queen Camilla, as a teenager, fought off a man who tried to grope her by deploying a shoe.
A handy stiletto. Always have one handy. It was a really interesting interview with Kemi Badenoch we had just before. But we're going to stick with politics.
Yeah.
Because
Reform have got a press conference and it's Zia Youssef who is in charge of their plans to cut waste in the town halls that they won from May. Let's have a listen to Zia Youssef.
One put us at 34%, one put us at 35% with a staggering
15-point lead on a Labour government that feels like a long time ago, I know, won a walloping majority not much longer than a year ago. But reform is not just about securing our borders, restoring our sovereignty, and restoring justice, as important as those things are. It's also about fighting for taxpayers. For too long, British taxpayers have been taken for mugs. And on May the 1st, reform smashed the uni-party duopoly on British politics, delivering a result unforeseen, certainly in our lifetimes, arguably a result unforeseen for a century. And in those councils that reform has control of, with the limited power available to councils in this country, reform has been pulling on those levers with all of its might. Our brilliant council leaders, many of them are here in this room now, have worked with their teams to look to fight for taxpayers. And what we have already done is save north of £100 million in the first 100 days of those reform councils, in no small part as a result of ending and scrapping the outrageous net zero spending, spending money on upgrading buildings that certainly did not need upgrading. And what we've also seen and shone a light on, a very bright disinfecting light, is the outrageous manner in which British taxpayers have been asked to pay for illegal migrants' trips to safari parks, trips to the circus, trips to the cinema, Domino's Pizza, McDonald's, TV licenses. British people are sick and tired of being treated like second-class citizens in their own country. But our work has only just begun. We're only just getting started, and so I'm very pleased and very proud to introduce Richard Tice, the Deputy Leader of the party, who will share with you analysis that we have done, which will demonstrate that inside our reform councils, we're going to be able to save tens of millions of pounds more. And if you extrapolate that to the national scale, the numbers are absolutely gargantuan. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Richard.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Zia, for that introduction. Well, when we won those 10 councils and the largest party in 3 others, we said that we would dig in, we would get to work and we would find some savings. And everybody said, no, it won't be possible. You might find a little bit here and there in a few traditional areas. But no, we said, actually, we're going to look everywhere. And we're going to look in locked cupboards. We're going to look down the back of the sofa. And I just want you to imagine, just imagine that we found savings of between 6 and 8% of annual council expenditure in a place that no one's previously looked. Just think about that. Imagine what you could do with 6 to 8% of annual expenditure. That would give you the properly funded resources, for example, to invest in social care. Everybody talks about better social care provision, but no one's found a way to pay for it, or more health facilities, or more bypasses. Just imagine what could be done with that 6 to 8% extra. But sorry, folks, you can't have that because actually you've got to put up with overcharging and underperformance. So the question is, how long do you accept being overcharged by a supplier? And how long do you accept with poor performance, bad performance? How long? 1 year? 3 years? 5 years? Longer? Before someone comes along and gives you the yellow card. And then if you don't perform, it's the red card. That's what you do in business, and that's what we are starting to do with our councils. And it brings us to the sometimes unglamorous topic of local government pension schemes. Not sexy, but the numbers are enormous. And pensions are complicated, so everybody switches off. I can't do it, I'll rely on my advisor, my consultant, which of course allows masses of room for huge rip-offs and decadent complacency. And that's what, when we've dug into the numbers across our 13 councils, that we have found. And the scale of the numbers are huge across these 13 councils. Total annual expenditure, the audited numbers to March 24, £19 billion every single year Huge numbers, of which a whisker under £2 billion is employer contributions to the pension schemes from the councils. Now, we're not talking about touching any of the existing rights or entitlements or benefits of any employees or retirees. Those are sacrosanct, absolutely sacrosanct. What we're talking about is something quite different. The size of these pension funds, the numbers are enormous. Our 13 councils alone, you're looking to March 24, which is the last audited numbers, about £66 billion. What is that? It's bigger than our annual defence budget, just in 13 councils. Across the whole of the local government pension scheme, it's over £400 billion. So we represent, give or take, for ease of maths, 15% of the overall, just 15%. These numbers are enormous. And the thing is that when you're investing pension funds, because all of these council employees, they're all defined benefit schemes. So you get fixed entitlements and then inflation linked. So here's the thing. The performance of how those funds are invested really, really matters. Because if the performance is better, then actually the employer, the councils in this case, can contribute less. But if the performance is worse, then the employer has to contribute more, because you've got a fixed inflation-linked liability. And the council is the balance sheet of last resort. It has to ultimately be the backstop. So performance of these funds really, really matters. And performance is a combination of how the funds are invested and the cost that you pay in the fees to advisors and managers to invest them. And what we discovered is that the fees are frankly egregious. Now, I've been involved in investment management. I've been involved in investing pension funds and charity funds for many, many years. And I know if you walk into a city investment manager with £5 million, you would not expect to pay more than 0.5% in fees. In fact, you'd expect to pay less. If I walk into anybody in the city and say, I've got 50 or 60 billion pounds to invest, how much? Let me tell you, they'll bite your hand off. And the cost would be a fraction, a tiny fraction of 0.5%. So if I tell you that these pension funds, these 13 pension funds between them, are paying 0.5%, 338 million quid in the year to March 24, that is an overpayment by some 265 million pounds, just in 1 year, in 13 councils. Roll that up across the whole LGPS, that's over £1 billion of overpayment of fees that no one's been talking about. It's unbelievable. It's not surprising investment managers in the city make loads of money and do very nicely. So the cost of the fees every year is really important. It should be around about maximum 0.1%. The average across our 13 councils is 0.5%. Some are more, quite a lot more, some are a bit less. And then you come to the performance, and you've got the printouts there. The numbers, so the unaudited provisional numbers to March 25, they've underperformed cumulatively by almost £1 billion. In the 3 years to March 24, they've done a little bit less bad. They've underperformed by about £750 million. In the 5 years to March 24, in every single year across the board, they've underperformed by about £1.24 billion. That's just the underperformance. You then top up with the overpayment of fees. These numbers are enormous. Roll that up across the whole of LGPS, and all of a sudden, you're talking about between 8 to 10 or 11 billion pounds a year, which is the sort of number that people say social care needs to be a world-leading, world-beating social care provision. So this really matters. This is a nationally significant issue, but no one's been talking about it until we came along at Reform. This is Reform at work. For those who say we're just a protest party, let's look at them when they actually get to work. Well, we're at work, and this is what we're finding that no one previously has been talking about. What's a sort of sensible benchmark for that underperformance? Well, the truth is, active investment managers never outperform the average tracker index, the average benchmark. And pensions are long-term, so you should invest in equities that always outperform any other asset class. A 75-25 split between global equities, and the cheapest is a sort of global tracker, such as the FTSE global trackers, MSCI World global trackers, and 25% in a bond index. That's the benchmark. When you look at all these reporting accounts, what's extraordinary is they all admit that they've missed their own benchmarks. They don't tell you what their benchmark is. It's really hard to find that out. They all admit they're underperforming, but there's no accountability. There's no responsibility. What we are seeing is a gravy train culture in the local government pension schemes of overcharging with no responsibility, of underperformance with no accountability whatsoever. And it's the council taxpayer who's being ripped off, who is suffering the consequences. Now, there's some very detailed performance charts. You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to go into those, but they are in your pack, setting out the performance per council per year. 1 year, 3 years to March 24, and 5 years to March 25. It's quite interesting how slow they are actually to audit their numbers. That sort of tells you something, frankly. But you're looking at a range of between 6 and 8% of annual council expenditure. And then let's just get back to the fees, because not only have you got the 265 million overpayment of fees, but of course there's good governance and there's good compliance. And these 13 councils alone are spending £18 million a year on governance and compliance to completely miss the elephant in the room. Fees and performance. Those are literally the two main things that you should be looking at. And if one council can charge £500,000 for governance and compliance, why does the council almost literally right next door pay £2 million? Where's the economies of scale? I mean, the advisors, the consultants, the lawyers, they are making off like bandits. This is a genuine outrage. It is a true scandal of mismanagement. And then you look at the actuarial valuations. Some people might say, no, Richard, they're all underfunded. They're not. They were all slightly overfunded, with one tiny exception at March 22, the March 25 actuarial valuations. They will all be well overfunded. 6 to 8%. Who manages these schemes, you say? Who's responsible? Well, they're managed by 8 pools. And we're all in the wrong job. The job to be in is to be a director of one of these pools, because the chances are you're earning over £500,000 a year. Some are earning 600 grand a year. These are amongst the highest paid public servants in the country. Now, you might say, well, if you're doing a brilliant job, if you're knocking it out of the park in performance terms because performance matters, then you don't mind paying a good whack. But if you're overpaying, being overcharged, and consistently underperforming, it's extraordinary. Where's the governance and compliance? These 8 pools, they have their own governance teams and compliance. No one seems to check them out. Well, you know the old expression, what's responsible? Go woke, go broke. When you dig in to these reporting accounts, you find that actually there's more space allocated to climate change, more pages devoted to climate change than there is devoted to the performance of the funds. And so you've got the Nature Climate Fund, you've got the Climate Opportunities Fund, the New Environmental Opportunities Fund, Renewable Funds, Sustainable Funds, however long the list is. This is a meaningful cause of underperformance. Not the only one, but a meaningful one. And then there's another thing. Because when you invest in trackers, they're listed equities. You can see the valuations every day. But the truth is, many of these are invested in what we call illiquid investing. They're locked up in funds that you can't sell. They might be a 5 or a 7 or a 10-year fund. All these climate funds, most of those are illiquid investments. And that generally means you're paying higher fees. You can't get out of them if the managers don't turn out to be any good. And then also the managers are tempted to overvalue the funds every year in order to earn higher performance-related fees along the way. All of these councils, with one exception, are invested in between 20 and 40% of their funds in these illiquid funds. That is simply negligent. At a maximum, it should be 10%. This is simply financially incompetent at best. Gross negligence at worst. Where's the governance and the compliance for your 18 million quid? Well, what are we going to do about it? Well, the first thing is we're absolutely determined to stop this rip-off, this complacency. Because it's not glamorous, because people don't understand it, no one has dug into it. Well, we have. The second thing is we're going to urge all our council pension committees to urgently change course. This cannot go on. It is simply unacceptable. And today we're lodging an urgent question to the Speaker to raise this in the House of Commons first day back after the holidays. The numbers are enormous. £8 to £10 billion a year is the potential if this is done properly. And any council committee that says, no, we're not going to do this, we're quite happy with the status quo, mark my words, if you do that, you are showing you're on the side of the rich city investment managers. We at Reform, we're on the side of elderly, vulnerable residents in our council areas who need better social care. That is the difference, ladies and gentlemen. And finally, the next thing we need to do is, because frankly of what's gone on with these pools, we need to look at a new Reform pool manager. Because bluntly, we think we can do this better. We've done it before, we understand it more, and I think this is proven by the fact that no one has ever previously dug into this like this. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is Reform at work, digging in, finding savings on behalf of our residents and our taxpayers. Thank you very much. Now, in our usual way, we look forward to questions from the press, and we've got a long list here. We're starting with GB News, Olivia Uckley. Hi.
So can you guarantee that council tax would go down under Reform? And also, do you have plans to reform other public sector pensions, the NHS, teachers, for instance?
So what we're identifying is these potential savings, absolutely significant. The council committee, the pension committees have got to change course. And these are the numbers on a long-term basis that are clearly shown, 5, 6, 7 years. And then it's for the council leaders to decide what to do with it. Everybody's talking about social care. No one's found a way to fund it. So that is a very obvious place to start. But every council will be slightly different. But the sort of equivalent numbers you're talking about per household, as an average, it's between £300 and £350 per household per year. So it's real cash. And of course, to the individual paying that council tax, that's a post-tax number. So the big sums, ultimately, it's for the individual councils to decide. If you've got a council that's already got a brilliant social care provision, they might say, yeah, we can freeze council tax or whatever. So that's ultimately to them. What we've got to do is change course urgently. BBC, Helen Catt. Sorry, there was one other subtext, I'm sorry, Olivia, to your second point. Yes, this is the first phase of what we're looking at. And to repeat, we're not talking about touching anybody's rights, entitlements or benefits. But there are other parts of the public sector pensions that do need looking at. Lots of people know it and are talking about it. The bond markets are worried about the unfunded pension schemes. That is for a later day. This is focusing on the local government pension schemes, which are funded. Actually, they're well funded, they're just shockingly managed. Sorry, Helen.
Can you just explain a bit more, when you're talking about the pension committees changing course, in what way? Is it directing what they can and can't invest in? Is it changing the original arrangements? And with a new reform pool manager, is that about sort of pulling all reform councils out of their existing arrangements, clubbing together to become a pool on your own, and you have someone that manages that? Can you just explain how it works?
Yeah, so it varies between each council, but every council has a pension committee. The constituency of that varies literally per council. And they need to look at what's gone wrong. They need to look at these numbers and say, why hasn't this been spotted before? Why haven't we been advised of this before by our advisors? Frankly, I think there needs to be, in some of the councils, there needs to be a serious review with a possible request for some significant refunds. And yes, we want them immediately to say to their advisors, we want to pay much lower fees. This is outrageous, and here's the proof. And yes, the reality is that in a medium-term basis, you will not beat the tracker index. So you might as well invest 75% in a global tracker, and that will always give you the best performance. And then of the balance 25, that should be in short-term bonds. You could possibly put up to 10%, for example. If you want to invest in infrastructure, and there's lots of talk about investing in infrastructure, well, maybe you should only invest in your council area. And everybody's talking about the lack of housing, so maybe up to 10% in social housing in your particular council should be something that these pension committees and the councils should be looking at. But that's the first thing these council committees have got to do. Obviously, they're all, they've got their constituencies, so they have to have their own decisions and minutes and meetings and votes. But we are giving them a very clear steer that we think they should be looking at. And yes, frankly, I think that our own reform pool manager will do a better job. And some of these committees, no doubt, will say, well, I'm not sure. And we'll say, well, we can see what side you're on. We're on the side of the residents, the vulnerable and the elderly. Thank you. Sky News, Tamara Cohen.
Thank you, Tamara Cohen, Sky News. You said that under these plans there would be no change to the entitlements of any current or retired local government employees. But in the future, will there be any changes for future staff? Will they still get the kind of final salary pensions they get under the current arrangements? And also, can you give us a sense of what happens if the pension committees don't want to change to what you're suggesting?
Yeah, so as I understand it, by law, public sector workers have to be offered a defined benefit pension scheme in the council. So that's the law. So until the law is changed, that's the reality. What we're focusing on is the existing arrangements, because even just sorting out this gives you huge numbers. And there may be all sorts of things to look at in the future, but we're dealing with the here and now, and the numbers are so big, they need to be dealt with. And I just say to those committees, they'll look at it, of course, and no doubt they'll get those very well-paid advisors and consultants who've done a shocking job to date. They'll no doubt seek their advice. And frankly, they should discount it. And they should look to adopt what we've suggested. Let's wait and see what happens, shall we? But ultimately, we plan to win the next general election, and we know these savings are here. They're for the benefit of council taxpayers, and we're not going to accept continuing overcharging and underperformance, and nor should anybody. Thank you. LBC, Agnes. Hi, Agnes.
Hello, Aggie Chambray, LBC. I've got a couple of questions. Number one, when are you hoping to make these savings, potentially of £1.5 billion a year by? And number two, the reform leader of Warwickshire Council told LBC that, and I'm quoting here, again with COVID, it's a conversation people want to have about whether or not they should be promoting vaccines. The government did say it would stop you from getting COVID, but it didn't. Just a question, and I'll leave it there. Do you agree with his sentiment? And if there was a reform government, would it promote vaccines?
Very good question. Look, the first point is these savings can be achieved as the faster these pension committees meet, change course, as we have indicated. But obviously, if they decide not to change course and stay with the mismanagement, frankly, the negligence of the status quo, then those savings won't be achieved. And it's fair to say we'll be pretty grumpy. So, yeah, there's lots of work to do. We're not afraid of hard work. We've identified the opportunity for savings. The sooner we can achieve them, the better. But the backstop will be when we're in government. Look, we're here to talk about pensions. We could talk about vaccines all day. I think that is for another day. That's a matter of personal choice, bodily autonomy. Daily Express, Christian Calgie. Christian.
Morning. When word first emerged that you were going to be looking at council pensions around about June, the unions came out pretty strongly against straight away. So are you confident that you can make these changes without mass staff walkouts? And again, if you're in government, isn't there quite a threat that if you start going and digging around NHS pensions that you could end up with a doctor's strike?
Thank you, Christian. Well, that's why I've reiterated, I think, 3 times this morning. We're not talking about changing any rights, any benefits, any entitlements of any of these schemes. What we're talking about is managing them better. And I think union leaders, when they look at this, will say, actually, I may not like to admit it, but Tice is right. We would like our union members who've retired actually to have better social care provision in their local area. So if we can find these savings, and I'm not generally sure that union leaders are that friendly with city investment managers, so I think they'll view this as a bit of common sense. And in a sense, maybe that's why Reform are taking voters from across the political spectrum, from left, centre, right and everywhere, because actually we can identify savings and we can actually find savings for ordinary folk, and that's the key objective. So, Telegraph, Tony Diver. Where's Tony?
Hello, thanks Richard. Tony Diver from The Telegraph. The government's centralising the administration of local government pensions already, and Rachel Reeves has said she wants to see more local government money invested in British companies and British infrastructure. Under your plans, you're using a passive global tracker which wouldn't allow you to do that. So just to be clear, are you opposing the government's plan to make local government pensions by British?
Well, yeah, the reality is what Rachel Reeves is actually doing, when you look at the subtext, is she is looking to take away the investment decision-making from the councils. And this is part of the subtext, which I was horrified to see, that the pool managers who've currently been failing and are being allowed for overcharging and overpayment, those are the very same people that Rachel Reeves wants to give more power to, and she wants to reduce it from 8 to, I think, 6 and possibly less. That's the last thing you should be doing. And look, we want, that's why I've said, if you want to invest in infrastructure, well, what about local infrastructure? Lots of these funds are investing in infrastructure all over the world. They're investing in wind farms all over the world. What about investing in our local council areas? In health facilities, in social care facilities, in bypasses, in social housing. That's the smart thing to do. And so, yeah, I think that the government is going down the wrong track on this. And I warned her in the House of Commons about too much investment in unlisted funds. That's on the record. Thank you. The Guardian, Peter Walker.
Hi there, Richard. In recent weeks, you've, in effect, say you know more about climate change than climate change experts. You know more about the Church's teachings than the de facto head of the Church of England. And now you're saying you know more about pension funds and managing them than people who manage them on a day-to-day basis. Is this a kind of pointer towards the way a Reform UK national government might work? Would you be not particularly interested in listening to experts and just do what you think is right?
Listen, here's the thing, isn't it? When you run a company, right, advisors advise and directors decide. And when you run a country, yes, take advice from all sorts of people. But ultimately, it's up to you, Cabinet Secretaries of State and the Prime Minister, to listen to the advice and then decide what you think is right and what you think is wrong, across a range of things. You could have taken a range of advice on climate change, and there's widely differing views. We've got a whole multitude of faiths in this country, and look, I'm a Christian. Do I think that the Archbishop of York should be interfering in international migration policies? No. I think he might focus on actually increasing his own congregations. That might be a good start. So, look, that's the point about leadership, right? It's challenging, it's difficult. You have to make some difficult decisions on all range of things. You take advice, and then you have to make your decision and be held accountable for it. So, PA Media, Chris McCowan.
Thanks, Chris McKeon, PA. On a different subject, I asked this question last week and I didn't get an answer, so I'm going to ask it again. Would a reform government be willing to pay money to hostile regimes like the Taliban and the Iranian government in order to take deportees? Yes or no?
Thank you. So the thing about when you're in business, and sometimes you do business with people that you may not like, but it might work out to be a sensible transaction for both sides. And I've said it on the media recently. If we want a ceasefire in Gaza, whether we like it or not, people have got to deal with Hamas. If we want a ceasefire in Ukraine, whether you like it or not, you've got to deal with Putin and his colleagues. And if we want to return people to various countries, such as Afghanistan, we've got to deal with the people who are leading that country. Here's the real point, though. If it's in the interest of the British people, and that's the role of the British government, is to look after the interests of British citizens, then there's a justification for doing it. And as Nigel said quite rightly, we're not responsible for all of the bad things that happen by bad leaders elsewhere in the world. Let's just focus on running our own country properly, making people better off, more prosperous, with better public services. And that's what this proposal does, potentially providing substantial extra funding, if the council leaders want it, in social care in local areas. I think we need to focus a little bit more on those sorts of issues. I hope that answers your question. Sometimes you do deals with people you may not want to go down the pub with. William Hazel from the iPaper.
Thank you. When it comes to these investment managers in the city, we obviously know that city is a very important part of the British economy, potentially an important source of support, maybe donations for reform in the future. Are you effectively saying these people who work in the city are sort of lazy and incompetent? And what message does that send to other people in the city? And if I may, secondly, could I get your reaction, Richard, to the latest question surrounding Angela Rayner's tax affairs and that purchase of that property in Hove, please?
Interesting diversion. Yeah, look, with regard to the investment managers, they're very bright people. They work very hard, they're very smart, and at the end of the day, if you're negotiating with someone and you can convince them to pay you vastly over the odds for a service, then that's why maybe lots of investment managers have become extremely wealthy and grown their business and then sold it, very often on the back of these local government pension schemes. Here's the thing, though. We at Reform, we're business people. We've been around the block. We are now poacher turned gamekeeper. We're negotiating on behalf of taxpayers. That's the difference, and that's why we're looking around everywhere to find savings. And there's lots of great people in the world of investment management. In the nicest possible way, they can look after themselves. Our job running councils is to look after residents, in particular elderly, vulnerable residents who want better social care. With regard to Angela Rayner, yes, well, according to all reports, everything she's done is legal and above board. Whether it's morally above board is a different question. I'm slightly confused which is her main residence. Her main residence for constituents seems to be Manchester. Her main residence for HMRC seems to be Brighton. And her main residence to do a job seems to be London. Maybe she can clarify what is the main residence. Matthew Holhouse at The Economist.
Thank you. You've cited some pretty substantial savings for the taxpayer from it. I'm over here.
There you are.
Thank you. Thanks. You've cited some pretty substantial savings for the taxpayer from this. Can you clarify, are you going to be predicating tax and or spending commitments at the election on the savings that you claim from this policy? And if so, can you clarify what the number is that you think will be in the scorecard? And secondly, this summer you've been talking a lot about clearing out the civil service, public sector pension managers being one example. In terms of the bigger picture, I mean, it sounds a bit like Reform are moving away from the sort of historic British Northcott-Trevelyan model of a permanent professional bureaucracy towards something a bit more American, more sort of high-level political appointments in the bureaucracy. Is that the right impression? How do you see that panning out?
Yeah, we've always said since before the election, we thought there were substantial savings to be made. Nigel said, the contract said we could save £5 in 100. It was literally the first page in our contract. And as we get to work in these councils, it's like a sort of trial for us. What we're seeing is, everyone said we couldn't save it, it's not there to be done, Richard. Turns out I think we were being a little bit cautious in the potential savings. Whether it's the councils or the government, there are huge savings to be made. I mean, you had HS2 with the 100 million bat tunnel. We've got another bat tunnel being planned in Lincolnshire for nearly £5 million. We're not going to do this stuff. It's insane. All over the place. There are massive savings to be had. And we want good people to come in and help reform as the next government, when we win the next general election, to get stuff done. And, of course, there are lots of good civil servants who will recognise whoever's the elected government, their job is to carry out the will of the people and that manifesto. It's those who want to stop that. And we are getting a little bit of experience of some very helpful council employees and some who think, nah, maybe you're just the cherry on the cake. So we're learning fast, and there's a hell of a lot to be done, because I think most people say, and we get this all the time, well, you don't know what you're doing, you're not the professionals. Well, if the professionals and the experienced politicians have been in charge for the last 20 years, how's that working out? The answer is not very well, and that's why we're leading in the polls. Thank you. So, unheard, Max Mitchell.
Thanks, Richard. So, Kemi Badenoch has said she wants to drill more North Sea oil, but we produce so little oil and the prices dictated by global markets. Much of it's for export as well. So, in Lancashire, in a Reform-led council, there's apparently no plans for fracking the huge amounts of shale gas. What is Reform's fracking policy, and what would you do if you got into government?
Well, once again, one of the two main parties is copying and learning from Reform. The Labour government have copied and learned from us on defence spending, 2.5% on GDP to 3%, and how to pay for it. And the Tories are now resigning from the very policy they introduced by law in 2019, net stupid zero. And it's quite funny, really, to see them sort of catching up with us. Yes, we've made it very clear. One of the reasons we're doing well in Scotland, drill, Scotland, drill. Oil and gas made the UK very prosperous in the 80s and 90s. And ever since, we've been growing renewable generating capacity, our electricity bills have gone up, and our energy dependency from overseas has increased, and we've still got bags of oil and gas. But they just reduced the incentive to invest in it, to explore more oil and gas fields, whether it's offshore, whether it's onshore. Most people don't realise we've had over 1,000 onshore wells of oil and gas in the UK in the last 20 plus years. Most people don't realise that. And look, with regard to shale gas, and shale gas is the thing to focus on. Fracking is just one method of extraction of shale gas. It's what's made America very wealthy in the last 20 years. You cannot have a rich nation unless you've got cheap energy that makes you competitive. And we are having industries, whether it's steel, oil refineries, chemical production, automotive, that are being destroyed right in front of our very eyes because of expensive energy. So yes, we've got all this energy treasure under our feet, offshore, onshore. We've got a whole load of it, shale gas, in Lincolnshire, and I get a lot of support in Lincolnshire to look to explore that shale gas opportunity. Now look, I accept in Lancashire, because the Antis ran a great campaign, which allegedly had some interesting financing sources for that campaign, it became unpopular. But here's the point. It is grossly negligent. If you've got a whole load of energy treasure under your feet, to not even try to extract it using the latest new extraction techniques. Because you know what? Technology evolves. Extraction techniques evolve. And I think it's sensible to have a couple of wells independently supervised and monitored for a couple of years. So you can then do two things. You can prove whether the reserves that the energy companies think is there truly are there. Some question that. Well, let's find out. And then you can prove whether or not you can do it with a level of seismicity that people accept. And people get very excised, and it's really important this, about seismicity. 0.5% on the Richter scale, yes, it's an earthquake. It's the equivalent of you, any of you, moving your chair backwards from where you're sitting and standing up. That's not an earthquake, folks. Right? Just over 2 is the equivalent of a bus driving past your front door. The scaremongering tactics about this has simply been outrageous. So why don't we do the responsible thing and say we've got all this treasure, we should look to explore it, because all of the nations who are extracting their own oil and gas are the nations that are doing well, and we're doing badly. That takes me to Politico. Noah.
So that's Richard Tice. The press conference will continue, but we thought time to draw to a close. Gentlemen, interesting area. Reform are often criticised for lack of detail, lack of policy. It's a very specific policy. He's saying that local government pensions have been neglected for years. Fees are too high. They're not well managed. You could save millions and tens of millions simply by linking the pension to a basic market tracker.
Yes,
basic, rudimentary. Why hasn't anybody thought of it before?
And I'm all for, you know, ripping up the status quo when looking at things like this. I think if there are better ways of doing things, that's fine. You could question the idea of them doing a big announcement on it because of the granular level of detail and it being seen as boring. However, Reform have got to show that they're serious as a potential government in waiting. This shows that they are, or certainly more so. I think to link it back to social care, which is the great ticking time bomb and where a lot of the budgets are going in local authorities, is a clever one. I would still, however, question their economic agenda, which, you know, Nigel Farage last week talking about a run on the markets, the way Labour are going. You know, he's talking about a £40 billion tax cut, huge borrowing, and all the rest of it. So, you know, it will remain to be seen if they continue along this path or not. But interesting all the same.
Yes, and Aman, potentially they have identified £8 to £10 billion of savings per year if these changes were extrapolated across all local authorities. And that's before they've even looked at other public sector pensions, NHS, education, etc. Potentially they could be talking about the kind of savings that would make those tax cuts possible.
Indeed, and I think what Richard Tice showed us today was that this is very much beginning to shape up into a reform government in waiting, simply for the fact that, well, look, you know what, the average man and woman out there, Miriam, you know, they want to do the right thing in life and they expect their elected representatives to do the right thing by them. And that's what we haven't seen over the last 3 decades, the Blairite orthodoxy. We've seen councils investing hard-earned taxpayers' money, left, right and centre, into things that completely do not make sense. But to make things worse, look at what we've seen over the last year. We've seen the jobs tax, the rise in national insurance contributions by Angela Rayner and, well, shall we still say Starmer's leader, Matthew? But Rachel Reeves is costing local councils £1.7 billion in extra payments. But you know what? They only get a £500 million in funding from the central government to pay for it. So that £1.2 billion alone is going to come out of somewhere. And this is what it boils down to. We have a government of national incompetence.
Do you think it's significant, Matthew, that they've picked on pensions? Because as Tice said at the beginning of his, in the middle of his speech, you know, pensions are complex. Many people don't understand their own pensions. It's difficult for many people to get excited about pensions. And yet there's such a key issue when we're talking about budget deficits and all the other spending plans that government have.
I suppose this may be a safer bet when the next 4 years are going to be very unpredictable, depending on what Rachel Reeves decides to do, whether there is a need for any sort of bailout. We're obviously getting closer to the edge. What Labour's backbenchers allow the Chancellor potentially to do, if we take the welfare issue as an example. And I suppose whatever happens, I said this at the weekend, whoever gets in are going to be faced with the same economic pressures that the Labour Party currently have as government. And for him to comment now, it's probably a little bit too early to talk about deficits and otherwise.
But potentially, if they've identified this in 11 or 12 local councils which they run, the chances are the rest of the public sector pension industry is in just the same sort of chaotic mess. Nobody's bothered, same old, status quo will operate. Potentially, there could be tens of billions of pounds of savings, and with no pain to the voters.
No, and if so, that I suppose allows them to maybe level up this and make it bigger if needs be. There's probably obviously work to do on that, and maybe they need to do a little bit more research. But I suppose the only negative to this, maybe it's not the only one, but is, are people going to understand the detail, and is it going to be easy for Labour or the Tories to go, they're going after your pensions? Whether Labour have got any credibility after clobbering pensioners is another question. But you know, you can say they're taking your pensions, they're messing with them.
But if they
scaremongering,
if they say they can cut your council tax by £350 a year.
Do you know what though? Do you know what with this sort of? I'm not to say they won't. I'm not to say they won't. I think people are fed up of politicians because they've been promised all sorts for years now, whether it be more bobbies on the beat and nothing seems to change, whether it be lower energy bills and that hasn't happened. I wonder whether people will quite believe it from any political party.
Well, they voted for the Socialists last year, Matthew.
Because they hated the Tories. Nothing to do with our popularity, I'll say that now.
So I'm glad you're admitting that they didn't vote for you. So
I will always be fair, Aman. You should know this.
That Labour is actually, you know, giving hope to the voters. But look, this is a serious matter.
I think it is.
It's a seriously serious matter. The fact that it hasn't been looked at seriously for the last 3 decades.
And these guys have only been in since May, so credit where it's due. They've only got in since May, and they've already identified potentially a rich scene.
And because they've only got 5, have they got 5, 6, 4 MPs in Parliament? I don't know, it changes quite regularly.
They have got 670
but because of that, exactly, they have to prove themselves through the medium of local authority. This is their opportunity. If they can do the British version of Doge and save all this money, then it gives them an enormous amount of credibility at the next election that they've got, frankly, no other way of gaining when they're in opposition. So it could be interesting.
All right, guys, that's the panel.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Next week. Now, coming up, the Labour MP Clive Lewis has labelled individuals who fly the St George's Cross flag outside a migrant hotel in Bothorpe as extremists who are attempting to mark territory. I compared this to a dog.
Exactly, and someone has actually sent us on Twitter a picture of a dog with the Union Jack, which is rather nice. We'll try and get that up. Well, he did criticise Norfolk County Council for not removing the flags, which have been displayed on lampposts around the Brook Hotel for over a week now.
Let's talk to the Labour commentator and friend of the programme, Paul Richards, who joins us now. Paul, why flags are so emotive is beyond me, but Mr Lewis here appears to have deliberately, in my view, you might think it's provocative to put the flag there, but to say whoever's done it are all extremists, is that really the right language to use?
Well, I disagree with what Clive Lewis said. To be fair, he didn't say they're all extremists. I think he said some of them might be extremists, which you know may or may not be true. But I think we all have to just calm down a bit. If people want to hang a flag to celebrate the nation, you know, entirely fine. Here I am with my Cross of St George's mug,
well done,
happily having my morning tea, and you know, let's just chill out about it, because in most of the people, I think, celebrate patriotism. They like being English. They like the flag, and they display it to support our sports teams, our armed forces, our National Day. It flies above across the Anglican churches every day. And I think people just, you know, need to just relax and enjoy it. And, you know, maybe it's a bit of a summer thing. I don't know. Maybe when autumn comes and everyone's back to work and things are a bit cooler, you know, we'll all move on.
Why do you think that some politicians on the left are so uncomfortable with the flying of the St George's flag and the Union Jack, for that matter?
I mean, I think the funny thing is that lots of Labour MPs are going completely the other way now. So I suspect some of them are turning up back to work today with their faces painted and their Union Jack T-shirts and God knows what else. I mean, they're sort of overcompensating, hanging them out of their windows just to prove that they are patriotic. I think, so, to be honest, I mean, the serious answer is I think there's a tiny minority, and we have footage of some of these people, don't we, on demos and so on, who do hate this country and do see patriotism as a bad thing. But that's not the Labour Party, and it's not the other mainstream parties either. And most people in public life are perfectly used to walking into a town hall with a Cross of St George flying, or, you know, celebrating the king's birthday or whatever the other symbols are of our nationality. And the argument then is within that framework of the nation, how do you tax? What public services do you have? How do you defend the nation? And all the debates that we have endlessly on GBNews. But, a flag should not be a bone of contention.
And of course, Keir Starmer made quite a point, didn't he, Paul, as Prime Minister, when he speaks at his podium in Number 10, there are 2 union flags on either side of him, as you pointedly drink from your mug.
Of course. And that's absolutely right. It's our national symbol, and it is a symbol of all of us and who we are. And I mean, I could point, as a historian, I can point to you to pictures of Clem Attlee and Keir Hardie, Labour leaders of yore, proudly standing in front of Union Jacks. That within the Labour tradition, of course, lots of armed service veterans, including Mr. Lewis, by the way, interestingly, who have served King and Country or Queen and Country, bearing a Union Jack. So I just think there's a tiny minority who want to make trouble over this and decry the flag and think patriotism is a bad thing. But I think most of us just want to get on with proper mainstream political debate. I mean, I'm not saying we all agree on everything all the time, of course not, but it is within a framework of support for the nation and for democracy, and the flag symbolises all of that.
What do you think about the flying of other nationalities' flags? Of course, we've seen many Ukrainian flags flying in this country, including on official buildings, since Russia invaded in early 2022. We've also seen the Palestinian flag flying. What do you think about flying other nations' flags?
Well, I think if I was in charge of a local authority, I'd just be a little bit wary of too much of this going on and it becoming cluttered. So I'm not sort of commenting on the individual causes or campaigns, which are controversial. Of course they are. If you fly a Palestinian flag, that is a very controversial political act in itself, which is why people that do it. But I wouldn't want to see every single curbstone painted and every wall with a mural and every flag, every lamppost with a flag flying off it, because I think that just clutters up our street scene and might sort of deface the beauty of our countryside and our towns and villages. So I think there's got to be limits. But if people want to fly a pride flag out their house, or if they're Scottish and Scotland are playing England in the football or the rugby and they want to fly a Scots flag, fine. Who cares? I mean, that's what people want to do. That's fine by me.
All right, Paul. That's Paul Richards, former Labour advisor. Thanks for joining us. Up next, Good Afternoon Britain with Cameron and Nana. We'll see you tomorrow, 9:30.
Goodbye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Now, it's another day of sunshine and showers for many of us, but watch out because some of the showers could be packing quite a punch with some hail and thunder mixed in. We do have a relatively mature low pressure system just to the northwest of the UK, and it's this that's the driving force for the showery theme that we have across the country. Now, there are various fronts, and these fronts do indicate